Okay, Julian is our conference chair. He's been teaching, training, facilitating, or instructing in some form for 20 years. Hush! Sorry, not really. He taught French, Spanish, history, and special education in British Columbia. Later, as a bilingual training consultant, he facilitated management and leadership development programs with Fortune 500 companies. He currently teaches at Chosun University in Gwangju, and this is now his third Pecha Kucha. His second was this morning. This is called The History of English in Verse. Why do we say geese, not gooses? Why are double negatives so bad? The history of the English language is a 6-minute and 40-second ride on the Pecha Kucha train, unraveling the mystery of our language's history in verse. Sit back and enjoy the rhythmic, rhyme, and reason of our ragtag rhetoric of a language. Now what I'd like to do to start here is I'd like you to give Julian a countdown. Starting at 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then go. You with me? Yes. Starting with, ready? You ready? 3. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Go!
Go! And go! You say tomato, and I say tomato. Differences in pronunciation have often distinguished friend from foe. George Bernard Shaw once said that England and America are two countries separated by a common language, but that wasn't always so. Permit a fool to tell a tale of happiness, triumph, resilience, and sorrow. For today I stand before you to unravel the mystery of our language's history. 440 AD, and England was the place to be. It was whence our story began, though Britain has been around since the dawn of man. We start with the foederati, a group of Germanic goons, often mercenary, who one should never invite to a garden party. You see, like many a tribal chief, the Roman emperor was having trouble with the neighboring thieves, so he invited the foederati for some relief. Well, then the governor stopped paying, which they considered a slight. In droves they came by boat, day and night, Angles, Jutes, Frisian, Franks, and Saxons alike. They purged the Picts and Celts and everyone else from this strange rock. With all the natives gone, all but 12 words were forgot. The first writing in Old English was made. You may have heard of it, Beowulf, a story of 3 monsters and our hero on a tirade. Well, the Danes kept coming season after season. A treaty was sought, a yearning for peace its reason. This great compromise the king oversaw, thus the name Alfred the Great for creating the Danelaw. Over those years of Danish invading and pummeling, early English endured thanks to the king by way of an oracle through writing called the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. But during those interceding days, and how was it that Norse, a rap chap, communicated with Edith, the sexy Saxon vixen, his newly betrothed? With Norse words like "prosset" being similar to Old English's "the horse." Can you guess what I'm talking about? A horse, of course! Simple compromises in grammar were made, helped avert marriages ending in disaster. With such simplifications for plurals given, we have books and horses, not beige and cross. If you remember nothing else from this Pecha Kucha, let it be this: the year 1066. Between England and Normandy, a dynastic spat for the throne, a battle in blood, paid for in bone. William of Normandy, a victory he did obtain in Hastings, killing King Harold with an arrow through the eye into his brain. The invaders ruled England for what amounts to a century times 4. Now, contrary to what you may have heard, our language was not starved or made poor. In fact, it blossomed and thrived because English was the language of the people, regardless of what was spoken at the steeple. As much as one may resent the French, it's they who we must thank for filling our lexical tank. Beef for cow, mutton for sheep, tailor, barber, all the list goes on, like pork for pig. Though ironically, though, the French now say cochon. We added layers of meaning, like hatchet for small axe, and demand for a strong form of ask. Eventually, though, England did prevail, in small part because the Norman kingdom became frail. With all the crusades and foreign wars, King John's world apart and tore. Though many may remember King John from the story of Robin Hood as King Richard Lionheart's evil brother 'Twas he who actually gave us the Magna Carta. Well, by now English literature was starting to prosper thanks in no small part to this man, Geoffrey Chaucer. Many languages could Chaucer read, write, and speak. English, French, German, Spanish? No, couldn't speak Spanish. But he could do Greek. But in English he chose to write, a language he chose to write about love and not out of spite. Van der April in de shore solte, the drocht of March, a persit to the rote, and bather every vine in speech and cool, a wit virtue, engendered is the food. It sounded pretty sweet, didn't it? But a little bit strange. That's because after Chaucer, our vowels went through a big change. We call it the Great Vowel Shift. Nobody knows why it happened, but my guess is to avoid pestilence and disease, people had to wander and shift. Well, if the GVS weren't enough, William Caxton, with England's first printing press, had it pretty rough. Finding consistent spelling back then was pretty tough. So the printers in London came up with a plan. They'd standardize spelling to make life easy on the ink man. It wasn't the scholars of Oxford or Cambridge in their ivory tower, oh no, that controlled the spelling. It was the printers in London now with all the power. Even with spelling quirks solved and vowel changes made, there was more in store for the English language, I'm afraid. There's one man you loathe when it comes to the English language. It ought to be this man, Robert Lowe, for it was he who came up with the idea that we should never end a sentence in a preposition. Now, what would I do that for? I thought of his book, A Short Introduction to English Grammar, still makes me stammer. Well, enough of the past. Who cares about the bard? Really? Just Billy Shakes, who cares? But what about this century? Well, our language is still changing. Just ask Hillary, for there is no one more famous for switching vowels than she. Does it sound like all this? Sound's not working. She's saying, I think what we need to do is assess the risk. Well, please answer the question, yes or no. Would you have sexual relations with Bill Clinton?
Not if I could avoid it. No, I mean, who would?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're still wondering why it's geese or goose and geese, well, this presentation is only 400 seconds long, so give me a break, please. Really, though, the word goose was introduced after all the changes were made, so the rules are pretty fast and loose. For artistic license reasons, some little details did I bend, but if you truly enjoyed my Pecha Kucha, please tell a friend.
It takes a lot of skill and a lot of work to put a great Pecha Kucha together, and that was certainly a great Pecha Kucha. Thank you, Julie. Now, the rest of our presenters today are all seasoned veterans of the presentation circuit, if you like. However, for some of them, it is their... Why is this doing this again? It's okay. But just to make it a little bit harder for them, we thought we'd try and pick them randomly to come on up. So, Julian, could you pick the next speaker, please?
I'm gonna let you bear it for that.
This will be Chuck Sandy. Chuck.